Okay, welcome to another demonstration. I'll be demonstrating programming exercise 4.3 from Mr. X textbook, online textbook. In exercise 4.3, we can see the description of what we're trying to do here. In effect, we're going to roll 2 dice. We're going to keep rolling the dice until we hit a ask for parameter. So we're going to make a function that will return how many times you have to roll the dice before you get some number. So we're going to roll 2 6-sided dice, and we're going to write down how many times it takes to get to a number. If the user passes, the user will pass that number to the function. So try to hit like 7. I want to roll a 7. How many times does it take? And if the user chooses a number that you cannot roll, such as -13, then you're going to throw an illegal argument exception. So in this program, in this function, you're going to learn how to do a throw for a throw, try, catch triplet. So let's begin with design. So I'm going to do a little bit of design on Paint here. I'm going to roll 2 dice. And that we're trying to hit a number, a target number. For instance, if my target is 7, I roll a 6, I roll a 2, I roll a 5, I roll a 7. It took me 4 times to get there. The thing is going to return a 4. So we can call the name of this function anything we want to, because in the programming exercise it doesn't specify. This is different from adhesive. In adhesive, you must name the program exactly, or the function exactly as they specify. Here you can name the function anything you want to. So we need 2 dice. We're going to roll it. In order to roll, we're going to need the random. 2 dice, I need 2 variables, 2 int variables. I can get a sum, and I can compare the sum to the target number. And once it's equal, I'm going to stop rolling. So I'm going to count how many rolls I do. Roll, 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 roll. Count how many. All right, so that's enough of the design. Let's write the design into coding. So I'm going to open up Eclipse. Right now I'm going to start Eclipse like I normally do by moving a blank file into the source folder of my demos. I copy the file in, and I'm going to change the name of the file to match the name of the class in which I'm doing this dice roller program. So let's call this class dice roller. So I need to change the name. I right-click on the blank file itself in the browser window. I choose Refactor. Where's the Refactor is? Here it is. And we want to rename this file. So I'm going to rename the file. Right now the file is called blank, and I'm going to call it dice roller demo. So once I've renamed the file dice roller demo, I open it up, and it's a blank file. At the top of the blank file, I'm going to write comments. Dice roller demo by Brian Schick, and the date I did this, 11/27/2018. Then we're going to name the dice roller. What are we trying to do here? I want to roll 2 dice until they sum to a specified value. And then I'm going to return and print the number of times rolled until hit target. So that's what we're trying to do. It's time to make the class into which we're going to put this function. So I always like public things, so I can make it a public class, and this is dice roller demo. Has to match the same title as the name of the file. Classes have open and closed curly braces. I want a main in here, so I'm going to put a main, public, static, void, main. And the main is for testing purposes. String, square brackets, args. So there's our main, open and closed curly braces for main. And then let's make it do something so I can test I did everything correctly. System.out.println. And this is the dice roller demo \n. How many times do I roll to hit a target? All right, so this string went too long. I'm going to cut it into different parts. And so I can move it to the next line. So now we have a print. We should be able to run this. It's mad at print line because I spelled it incorrectly. And now I spelled it correctly. It should run. So I'm going to run and test this. Always test as often as you can. So here I have my class working. I have my main working. The main is going to call a function after we get input from the user. So we get input from a user, get a target value from a user, pass the target to the dice roller function or method, and then print how many times the dice were rolled before hitting the target to hit the target. Okay, so this is main, get a target value from the user. So let's do that. Int target value.
This is inside main.
Yeah, inside main. I'm still in main. Equals get target value. So there's a function that doesn't work anymore. All the work I need to do to get target value from the user is done with this one function. I then store the target value here. I pass the target value to the dice roller method. It will tell us how many times rolled. Int how many rolls equals dice. Let's call it roll dice. Roll dice. And then we have to put the target here. Target value. And then print how many times the dice were rolled. That's just system.out.println. Dice were rolled plus how many rolls to hit the target value plus, what's it called? Target value. Okay, target value, let's change target value. Let's do a refactor. We can refactor, here it goes. Refactor, we're going to rename target value, and we're going to press enter to refactor. Oh, I'm sorry, something weird happened. I want to refactor target value. I think I select refactor. So I can find it. I think it's renamed. Ah, perfect. I want target value with a capital V. Update references, okay. Name collision with name target value, continue, that's fine. Okay, so now target value is a capital V, it fits. We have two functions that don't work yet because they don't exist. In order to test this, I need to make two stubs. And a stub function is a function that runs but doesn't do anything. Both of these functions return an integer. So they're both public statics. Both return integers. One is called getTargetValue. So I'm going to double click, copy it, paste it here. That's the name. GetTargetValue gets it from the user and returns it. So int targetValue equals, let's give it a -666, a fake value, and then we return it. Return target value. So here's a fake function. It doesn't work correctly, and it returns a fake target value, but it runs. So target value will come in, it's fake. How many rolls is roll dice? I need something that says roll dice, returns an integer. I'm going to make a stub, public, static, int, roll dice. I double click on roll dice, control copy, paste it down here, control V. Roll dice takes an integer as a parameter, int target. And we're going to do the same kind of thing here, int rolls equals -666. Let's make it 999. And then return rolls. Okay, so now this should run, and it should fail and not do what it's supposed to do. So we're going to run this and see what happens, just to make sure I have my signatures correctly. So a signature of a function has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 bits. 4 bits. We have the access control. Then we have the return type. Then we have the method name. And then we have an open parenthesis. Then we have the parameter list. And so we see we have two functions here. Access control for get target value is public static. Return type is an integer, so get target value will return an integer. The name of the function is get target value. There is no parameters. It's an empty parameter list. When I roll it, I say the dice were rolled minus 999 times to hit the target value of minus 666. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix get target value, and it's supposed to do something for me. So let's write down in comments what this is supposed to do. /** return. This will give me a comment block for a method. If you do /**, it sets it up. It's a multi-line comment, and we name the thing. This is called get target value. And what it does is it prompts the user to enter a target value that one could roll on 2 dice. And it will accepts any integer, prompts again if user does not enter an integer. So we're going to keep prompting the user gives us an integer, and it returns an integer target value. All right, so now we know what it's supposed to do. First thing is to prompt the user to enter target value, and the fan thing says it prompts again and again if the user does not enter an integer. So I need a loop. I need a way to get stuff. The way to get stuff is the scanner, so I need a scanner. Scanner in scan equals new scanner system.in. Now hopefully everyone knows how to do this. And when we're done using the scanner, we close it. In scan.close. Then in the middle, we do this loop. I want to keep prompting until user enters an integer. And so there's 2 steps here. I need a string, need an input string, and we need to convert to an integer. So let's get the input string first. String input equals the empty string. And I need an integer to convert to. We have one. It's called target value. So now we have the target value. So now we can do the loop. Keep prompting the user enters an integer. We're going to do a do stuff while something isn't satisfied. Let's do while true. So we're going to do this forever. So now we have a runaway while loop, and somehow we're going to break out of the runaway while loop. So first we need to prompt the user to enter something. System.out.print. Print is fine. Please enter an integer, : close prompt. So let's do a prompt, and then we accept a string from the user. Input equals inscan.next line. This will get a whole line from the user. Hopefully it's an integer. If it's not, something will happen. And then for now, we're going to do a little test. We're just going to break and see what happens. I want to see if the scanner is working. So then before I close the scanner, I'm going to do a debug print. System.out.println debug : plus input. This will see if the user can give me input. It will then print debug and show me the input. So let's see what this does. I want to make sure I can get the user's input first. So I'm going to run it. It says, please enter an integer. I'm going to enter a high. And it says, debug high, and then it doesn't do anything with it. So it can accept a string input from the user. Now we need to convert the string input to an int, and this may or may not work. Try to convert to an int. So this is a try catch. Catch. Everything's an exception. Throw catch it exception E. And if the catch works, it failed, so something wrong happened here, we can say that's not an integer. System.out.print line e.what, or get message, there we go. Plus is not an integer. I should say input is not an integer, sorry. Input. Try integer dot parse int input. And we're going to store this in our integer, which is called target value. And if this works, then we're going to break. So I'm going to move my break up. Okay, so let's run this, see what happens. I'm going to leave my debug. Debug plus input plus space plus target value. All right, let's run this, see what happens. I've added a prompting user into an integer occurs. So now we have a naughty user, and we can handle a naughty user. Naughty user. Naughty user is not an integer. Please enter an integer. Minus b. Minus b is not an integer. Please enter an integer. Minus 88. Debug. Minus 88. Minus 88. Very nice. So it's working. All right. So now we have get target value working. The next one to do, I'm going to close get target value. I don't need to see it anymore. The next thing I do is how many roll dice. I need to roll the dice. Pass the target to the dice roller method. We need to figure out what RollDice does. So we're going to do the comments again to figure out what RollDice does. /**. Start comments for it. Parameter is target. So this is RollDice. And RollDice rolls 2 dice and counts how many times the dice were rolled until the target value was hit. Parameter target. So target is valid values are 2 to 12 inclusive, and this thing will throws what was the exception? Invalid argument exception. Invalid argument, I can spell it right, exception, if target is not in proper range. And it returns how many times the dice were rolled to hit the target value. So now I have it planned. So let's make it work. The first thing I need to do is get 2 dice. So I need 2 dice. I need a counter. Count how many times rolled. And I think that's it. We have a sum. So need 2 dice. Integer die 1 equals 0, comma space die 2 equals 0. Need to count how many times rolled. Int counter equals 0. All right. So now we have this thing. Rolls 2 dice and counts how many times dice rolled until the target value is hit. So I need some kind of loop. Until the target value is hit. So I want to roll and then count. Roll until hit. And the best way to do that is a do while loop. So do something while not hit. While die 1 plus die 2 does not equal to target value. All right. What do? We roll a dice. Die 1 equals math.random. We have a random number here, random ints. Do we have random ints? We have random. And we want to die 6. So it's 6 times math random plus 1. And we want to change this to an integer, which it sets. So when we set it to die 1, we change it to integer. Perfect. And we want to do the same thing for die 2. Die 2 equals, so I have to explicitly cast it, 6 times math.random. Let me do math dot and see what I got to play with. Do I have something that gives me a random int? I have min, max, absolute, add, copy, export, floor, get logs, random, next, round, next up. No, it looks like I just have random to play with. Okay. Random plus 1. And we want to change these, once we add 1 to it, to ints. Int. Okay, so this should roll the die until we hit it. Something's wrong here. Int is missing. There we go. And then that's it. We have to count. Every time we roll the die, we increment the counter. Counter plus plus. So now this should work unless the user gives us a bad value. So let's see what we get when we run this. Something's while die 1 plus die 2 is not equal to target, semicolon. Let's run this to see what we get. This will work if the user gives us a good value. Right now we don't have the interrupt if they don't. So please enter an integer. I want to hit the roll of 7. So debug 7 dice were rolled minus 99 to hit the target value 7. So I need to increment my counter, not rolls. So let's get rid of rolls and change this to counter. We run again. Place an integer 7. How many times do I need to roll to make 7? I rolled 6 times. Let's run this again. How do I keep running? 7. 15 times. Run it again. 7. 8 times. Run it again. 7. 3 times. Run it again. 7. 8 times. So it looks like it might be working. Am I actually hitting this? So let's roll let's do a debug print here. System.out.println debug plus die 1 plus space plus space plus die 2 plus whoopsie plus space equals space question mark equals question mark space plus target. All right, so we have this debug to see if it's actually working or if I'm throwing random values out at me. And we'll see. Here we go again. 7. Oopsie, wrong place. 7. 6 plus 1 is 7. Yes, that worked. Let's try this again. Run. Please enter an integer. 7. 3 plus 4 is 7. That's correct. Let's run it again. 7. 5 plus 2. Looks like it's working. Let's run it again. 7. 3 plus 4 is 7. It's working. Okay, so now I can get rid of my 2 debugs because we don't want to see those. This is a debug. Drill slash. And the other debug is somewhere. Blah, 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 blah. Print line. Where's my other debug? Oh, I closed it. It's hiding. It is hiding right here. Debug. Go away. And this is now complete. Oh, no, not quite right. I could do 55, and then it runs forever. Runaway while loop, bad. Control C, end. Right. End this thing. So we need to fix that. We need to throw the exception, right? We've done everything except for the throw. Throws an invalid argument exception. The target is not in range. So we need to check for the target in range. That goes up here. Throws exception if not in range. And so we say if the target is less than 2 or the target is greater than 12, then it's not in range. And to throw, we do a throw, and it's new invalid argument exception. Hopefully I've spelled this right. And in here we're going to just say bad. I was just going to pass the value. Target. And see if this works. Okay, doesn't know invalid exception. Did I write it right? Create class, now change to exception, change to invalid activity exception, algorithm parameter. How about invalid algorithm parameter exception? No, we have to do invalid argument exception. Did I spell it right? Do we actually have an invalid argument exception? Let's go see if we can find that thing. All right, he says illegal argument exception. So I said it wrong. Illegal. Did I spell it right? Illegal access exception. Here it is. I spelled argument wrong. There it is. Okay, now we have that working. Everything should work now. It should crash when we do an invalid argument exception. So please enter an integer, BB. BB is not an integer, integer -8. Exception in thread main. -8 is bad. So it crashes, says -8 is bad. Very nice. Finite. All right. So for those of you who are doing the standard, not doing Eclipse, how many people? Can I do what? Yeah, so I'm going to do a summary. So I'm still recording. I'll do a quick summary, and we'll show you everything. So the first thing I did was I read the description. And in this description, we're going to roll a dice until they hit a specified value. Then I planned, in order to do this, I need to get a target value from the user. I need to pass that to the dice roller and roll 2 dice a certain number of times until it hits the target. And I need to print out how many times those were rolled. So I wrote the comments down. Then for each comment, I created a new function called get, whatever that task was. So I need to get a target value from the user. I make a function called get target value. I need to roll the dice until I hit the thing I call the RollDice method. I need to then print how many times the dice were rolled until I hit a target value. So I need a variable to show what the target value the user gave me was. I need a variable to show how many times I rolled until I hit the target value, and then I need to print. So that finishes main. But we have 2 functions that we need to flesh out. Get target value from the user and the roll the dice. So the first function is get target value. And in get target value, you need to continually prompt the user to enter an integer until the user enters a valid integer. And so in order to do that, I need a scanner. And the scanner will accept input from the user. That input's going to go into a string, so the user can type anything they want to. I'm going to try to convert what they type into a target value, into an integer. So I need a target value integer and a string input. So then there's 2 steps to get an input from the user. The first thing is to get a string using next line from the scanner. That is put into the string input, which is raw input. And then I need to parse that raw input and try to turn it into an integer using the integer function parseInt. Now the integer function parseInt will throw an exception if the string that it's trying to parse does not contain a valid integer. So if the user does not give us a valid integer, then we throw an exception here. If we throw an exception, we go jump straight to the catch and we do whatever's in the catch block. If we make it past this parseInt, then the user has given us a valid integer and we're out of the while loop. So we no longer have to ask the user for integers. If the user gives us something that's invalid, something naughty, we tell the user that he gave us something that's not an integer and ask the user to enter an integer again. So we see that there's no break in the catch, and the break will get us out of this runaway while loop. So right now we have a do while that's true, and this will continue to go as long as the loop is true, which is always true. So this while loop will run away and keep going until we get the break. The break statement will get out of the while loop, so that jumps out of the while loop. In effect, we ask the user to enter an integer, we see if they did, and if they didn't, we keep asking them again and again and again until they finally give us a valid integer, and then we break. We return the valid integer that they get. So that valid integer goes back into main, comes out of get target value, and the target value that the user gave us goes here into target value. We take the target value and we give it to RollDice. So now we get RollDice. Down here we see RollDice, and we plan what RollDice does. RollDice is going to roll 2 dice, 2 6-sided dice, and count how many times the dice were rolled until the target value is hit. The target value has valid range of 2 to 12. That's what you can get on 2 dice. If the user does not give us a valid target, we're going to throw an invalid argument exception. It's actually illegal argument exception, so let's spell it correctly. Argument does not have an extra E in it. And this function RollDice will return how many times the dice were rolled. So I need 2 dice to roll. I need to count how many times they were rolled. So I make my 2 dice. One's called die 1. One's called die 2. I set them to invalid values, 0 and 0. I set the counter to 0. To roll the dice, I need a random value. Random, math.random will give me a random number between 0 and 1. 0 inclusive, 1 exclusive. So I get a random floating point, a random double. I multiply that random double by 6, and this will give me a random double between 0 inclusive and 5.999999 inclusive, or 6 exclusive. I add 1 to that, that gives me from 1 to 6.9999. I change that to an integer, and that drops the fraction, makes it an integer. So I have 1 to 6. Each one is evenly possible with this random. So that's the math involved. I take the random function that comes out of the math library, get a random double, extend it to 6, so it goes from 0 to 6, 0 to 6. I add 1 to it, so it goes from 1 to 6, turn it to an integer, and put it in the die. So this die will roll from 1 to 6. This die will roll from 1 to 6. When I roll both my dice, I count it. I rolled it 1 time, increment my counter. Counter starts at 0, increment the counter. I'm going to do this and keep going until I hit the right target. The user has passed the target in here. We hope it's right. I look for it here. When the 2 dice are equal to the target, I'm done with the while loop and I stop rolling. As long as the 2 dice summed together are not equal to my target, I keep rolling. So we see, while the sum of the 2 dice is not equal to the target, keep rolling. Now, the user could give us this target. We saw the user can give us any integer. The user might not give us a valid integer. So if the user gives us an integer that's less than 2, or an integer that's greater than 12, that is an invalid integer. And we need to throw a new, which creates an instance of the illegal argument exception. And so this gives you how to throw things. So everyone really should look at this one. If you want to know how to throw things at a naughty user so that they crash their program unless they anticipate you throwing something, this is the syntax to do it. Use the keyword throw, and you need to throw an instance of an exception. So this is a specific exception, illegal argument exception. Exceptions will take a string as a parameter, and this will store that in the exceptions message. So as you see down here, exception in thread main, illegal argument exception, and the string is -8 is bad. And that's what I put in it, right? -8 is bad right here. Target is bad. And that throws it. It's not caught anywhere, right? Not caught here. It's not caught in my main. And if I throw this thing and it's bad and it's not caught, it goes to the operating system. The operating system catches it and gives us this stack dump here. Okay, where am I? We're almost done here. We're done. So if we get past everything here, we've counted how many times it rolled to hit it. We return that as a counter. That count goes back to main. We record how many times we rolled until we hit the target, and then we just print it out. Dice were rolled, how many times they were rolled, that comes out of RollDice, until they hit the target which the user gave us, target value, and we are done. All right, would you manage to follow, Stanford? Okay, perfect. So now this is saved. I'm going to end the save here.